Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Crystal and I had a baby almost a month ago. She was born on April 8th and I just want to share my birth story and how things are going and also introduce you to her. My story kind of begins 3 weeks ahead of time. If you follow me on Instagram and if you are a subscriber, you already know this part of the story, but basically what happened is at 37 weeks pregnant, I full on thought I was going into labor. I had all of the symptoms that I had with my second son. So if you are new, I do have two boys. One is almost 4 and one is 16 months. With my first one, I was induced, so I never actually felt labor, contractions start, or any of the physical things that come with labor. And then with my second, I went into labor a week early, so all of the symptoms I had with him I started feeling at 37 weeks with my daughter. Got cramps in the middle of the night, and it starts off feeling like period cramps, those light kind of achy, just ooh, I'm about to start my period. I got hit with those. And then I started getting the back contractions, and then they kind of start in your back and then come around your lower abdomen. And that's what contractions feel like. At least for me, they always start in my back. Started getting those in the middle of the night, and that's the same thing that happened with my son Maverick. And I honestly I thought I just had to go to the bathroom. So this time again, I went to the bathroom, things happened, and they say that that happens before you start going into labor. So I was like, it's happening, it's gonna happen tonight, I just know it. I told my husband, we were kind of getting ready, but I also knew they're not super painful, they're not super strong, and they're not consistent yet. So I was like, we have time, let's try to go to sleep. We're not gonna rush to the hospital. We don't even have hospital bags packed at this point. We went to sleep. I woke up, I was still having contractions. At this point, he called into his work. He's working from home, luckily, but he's still working all day. So he called his boss, said, wife's probably gonna go into labor today, so I'm not gonna be on possibly. We started just zooming around the house, getting our bags packed, getting the kids' bags packed, because they're gonna stay at his brother's house. And honestly, we also cleaned the house because I didn't want to come home to a dirty house. I was having these contractions all day, and there were some that were 10 minutes apart, there were some that were 3 minutes apart, there were some that were once an hour. I was I know it's not happening right this second, but it's happening. I feel like crap. I'm getting waves of nausea. I just have this off feeling, and that happened with Maverick. So I'm I know I'm in labor. I called the hospital to talk to a doctor there, and they got a nurse and a doctor, and they both were yeah, you're probably in labor, but we have to wait obviously until it's 5 minutes apart. We walked our neighborhood for an hour and a half, and those brought on some very intense contractions. But again, just nothing was getting synced enough for me to feel we should be going in. It was definitely frustrating to feel I'm in labor, to have pain and everything that I know to be labor, and just have nothing happen. This went on for 3 weeks. They were not Braxton Hicks because it was painful and they weren't going away. And with Braxton Hicks, if you change positions or move around, they typically go away. These were not going away no matter what I did. And I was definitely trying to speed along labor, so I wasn't taking it easy because I wanted her out. But nothing worked. I tried walking. I walked every day. I did the curb walking and nothing worked. So if anyone ever figures out how to actually get a baby to start labor, they are going to be so rich because everybody will want to buy the secret. She didn't come until 40 weeks and 4 days, 4 or 5 days. I think it was 4. 3 weeks of pain and thinking I'm in labor brings us to my 40-week appointment. At my 40-week appointment, my doctor noticed that she was turned, and that causes a problem because she's not head down and she's not ready to be born, basically. I had to do an ultrasound at my doctor's that day, and then he had me come back the next day to do an ultrasound with a tech, and if she was still turned, then we would schedule a C-section. If she moved back, then we would schedule me to be induced. Luckily, she turned back head down, So we scheduled me to be induced. We get to the hospital at 8 a.m., go to the delivery room, sign a bunch of paperwork, which is never fun, but it's part of it. Then they have you go into the bathroom and they give you these like giant wet ones basically. So you wipe your body with these wipes and then you put on the gown. You get monitors on for your contractions and then for the babies, like heart rate and all that stuff. Start you on the IV of fluids and Pitocin, and Pitocin is what like gets the contractions going and all that stuff. And then at that point you are just waiting for contractions basically. We started all of this at like, I want to say like 9:30, 10. It didn't take long before I started getting like some pretty intense contractions. Also, totally forgot to mention, I was only dilated at a 3 at this point, which you gotta get to a 10 to have a baby. I was like 80% effaced, and he said like my cervix was still like high and the baby was still high. So not the best news, and it basically meant like we're probably gonna be there for a long time. I basically just sat in bed for like an hour or two just to see if the Pitocin would like get things going. They checked me again and I was progressing, but not enough to really like get things going. So my nurse brought in a peanut ball, which I'll put a picture right here. It's the most like kind of uncomfortable thing ever, but it really like gets things going. So they put me on my side and put my like leg over it. I stayed like that for 2 hours. And then after that, they put it where I was kind of had my legs over it and like sitting kind of on it. And then sat like that for another like 2 hours and then moved to my other side. During this whole time, me and Scott are just watching Bar Rescue and movies. He brought his computer and we just were like watching TV the whole time, which if you haven't had a baby before, make sure you bring things to entertain yourself. Obviously phone charger in your phone, definitely bring like a laptop or an iPad and download movies or have like a portable Wi-Fi thing with you. It's boring and you could be there a very long time. And also make sure you pack snacks for yourself. You probably won't be able to eat them when you are in labor, but you will need them afterwards and through the night and your whole stay there. So I basically was just doing positions on this peanut ball the whole day. During that time, I got to my uncomfortable level and asked for the epidural. So luckily at my hospital, they do not like make you wait that long for it. It is up to you and it is when you are uncomfortable. So I asked for it when my pain was probably around like a 5 or 6, because I knew like it takes a while sometimes to get the whatever they're called, the epiduralist. I don't know what they're called, but the guy who does the epidurals, it usually takes a long time to actually get them to like come. So I always ask ahead of time, just knowing it could take a bit. Luckily I asked when I did because he was about to go into a C-section. He would have been there for who knows how long, and I would have been very uncomfortable with how the rest of the day went. The epidural was awful this time. He kept saying he couldn't find like the space to put it, which they kind of explained the epidural goes between like your disc and your spine, and hopefully that's correct. It felt like someone was digging in my spine because he basically was. And I feel like it took probably 30 minutes for him to figure out where to put this dang thing, and it was awful. I was squeezing Scott this time, and for the last two, Scott squeezed my hand more than I've squeezed his, but this time my like hands were shaking. I was in so much pain. Yeah, it sucked. I don't know why this one was hard to do, but it was not fun. And the whole time I'm just thinking like I'm gonna have issues, like I'm gonna be paralyzed or something. It just wasn't fun. But if I'll probably say this a lot, like if this is your first baby, but if it is, don't be afraid of it. Honestly, I've had 3 now, and 1 out of 3 being kind of painful. I don't think is that bad. It was still doable and still worth it. I got my epidural, I think, before we actually did the peanut ball. Recalling the stories is hard for me to do sometimes, so bear with me, like jumping back and forth here and there. Going through the peanut ball stuff, and my doctor checks me again, and I believe I was like somewhere like a 5 or 6, probably around like a 5, and he said that she was still too far up for him to break the water. Fast forward to around like 6 o'clock, and my nurse comes back and she checks me. She says, okay, you're good, you're at an 8. With both of my other children, when I get to an 8, it's basically go time. I go from an 8 to a 10 within minutes. So me and Scott look at each other and we're just like, oh shit, it's go time. And we both basically tell the nurse, like, get ready to go because this is what happens. And you can tell she was like, okay, sure, honey. As she's checking me, my water breaks. Immediately, I start feeling the pressure to poop, which that's basically your body's sign of saying like it's happening. There's just like so much pressure going on down there. It's the closest thing that you can explain it to is like the feeling of poop. It went from a 0 to a 10 style like pressure the second my water broke, and I look at Scott and I'm just like, I can't stop this. I think it's happening. Like, I think it's happening now. And he's like, how fast are we thinking here? Can it happen within minutes? And she's like, well, sometimes it can, but you know, it's probably still gonna take some time. And I'm just like, like, she's coming now. And I look at Scott and I look at her and I'm like, can you check me again? Because I think I'm gonna have this baby right now. Like, I can't stop. I feel like I need to push. She was like, don't push. She's like typing on her computer, like doing stuff. And I'm like, can you check me? Because I think it's happening. This was in like 5 minutes of her checking me and my water breaking, by the way. So she checks me again and she's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're gonna do this. So she immediately calls my doctor and she's like, we need you. And she calls to have like the table brought in and to get a baby catcher. She's like, don't push. And I'm like, I'm not trying to push, but my body is pushing. I'm like, I can't stop. Like, I can't stop this. My doctor comes in within like a minute. They're both laughing, my doctor and my nurse, and they're like, you were the last on our list to give birth and you just went to number 1. So everything gets set up, and within like 10 minutes and just a few pushes, she's out. It was really the first baby I had that I got to hold and not be uncomfortable and really enjoy that moment, which was just really nice. They also delayed the cord clamping and did everything basically on me, which we've never experienced before. So it was such a nice birth, to be honest. I didn't really tear this time. I tore a little bit, but not as bad as I did with my other kids. She was my biggest baby at 8 pounds 4 ounces, 21.5 inches long, which, how 8 pounds. For the first few hours after you have your baby, the nurses are coming in to take your epidural out, do tummy massages, check your bleeding, and then after a few hours and you go pee, they let you go to the recovery room. It was like 10 o'clock at night, around there. She was born like in the 7 o'clock hour. So after a few hours, we're in our room, and at this point I started to get really bad back pain. As like my epidural wore off even more, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I don't really like taking painkillers. I am sensitive to codeine, and we also think I have a allergy to ibuprofen. I can't really take anything besides Tylenol. So I am on Tylenol and it's not doing anything. I feel like my back is broken, and it's a pain I have never felt before. It's something I didn't feel with my last kids, and it was awful. And I kept asking, like, is this normal? Is this normal? Like, this doesn't feel normal. And of course I'm thinking that it's from the epidural or I broke like my tailbone giving birth, like something. It was awful. And They just kept saying like, it's your third baby, like things are just gonna be a little more intense this time. Like, don't be afraid of how crappy like your postpartum is probably gonna be, basically. Had that pain for 3 or 4 days, and it was just like lower back, felt literally like it was broken. But it went away luckily, and that no longer hurts, but everything else still hurts. That's pretty much it for the actual birth story. I can definitely like go into more detail of postpartum and recovery, all of that stuff. I have a feeling this video is already gonna be a little bit long, and you guys still haven't met her yet because she is just sleeping. So I am going to pause this here, and once she wakes up, I'll finish this up. This is Scarlett Nicole, and we chose the name Scarlett years ago. We have always just loved it. We named her middle name after my sister. Her name's Nicole. I never in a million years thought that we would have a girl after having 2 boys. There's just not a lot of girls in Scott's family, so I just never thought it was gonna happen. We are just so happy and trying to enjoy even the hard moments because they go fast, and she's probably our last. So even not sleeping and being exhausted, I am still just so happy and enjoying being a mom again and really just trying to soak in this newborn stage because it's hard, but it goes by so fast. She's already almost a month old, and that just seems crazy to me. It feels like we just brought you home. But she's starting to stay up more during the day, unfortunately at night too, but she's a good one. We love her so much. I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video, and if you have any questions on my birth story or going into labor, having a baby, anything like that, feel free to leave me a comment. Find me over on Instagram, you can DM me, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Yeah, you take all my wrongs and make them better. Yeah, you're making me wanna try forever. And I feel so free, oh my sweet baby.